All right, welcome on a Tuesday. I'm excited. There's an update this morning, so if you haven't installed it, make sure you install that. Hopefully that fixes some of the weird bugs we had last week. But Horizon has got a feature called the Projectile Launcher Gizmo, and I've got our all the things document here. I'm going to fill it out with the link to this video afterwards, and we can see Projectile Launcher can behave like a laser if you want it to. Has options for rocket, bullet, and ball, as well as color. Some cool stuff there. Very, very exciting. And so we want to dive into that and see how we can get it to work. Now, I want to start with some real basics, just get it functioning, but there is a second one, which is a physics-based projectile. That's pretty cool. So ideally, we'll look at that as well. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Here we can see the latest updates. I honestly don't have time to read this, so skipping over. All right, closing out of this AI thing, going to the console, because that's my favorite to have open. And what I'd like to do first is just go to Build Gizmos and pull out this little projectile gizmo. Here it is, projectile launcher, pull it out. And right here we can see, that's what it looks like. You can see on the properties panel, there's options for color, all this good stuff. Projectile preset, we should use, I think pistol looks the best, although spheres aren't bad either. And we've also got options for gravity. Oh, there's the projectile color. This color is not relevant. Oh, that's so hysterical. But yeah, here's projectile color. All right, now let's attach a script, new script, and we'll just call this projectile loop underscore entity. And what we're doing here is creating a very simple script to see this in action. So you get an idea of what it is, how it works, all that good stuff. That should be done any second. There it is, 3 dots, and edit script. I do have Visual Studio installed. It is selected. Let's go scripts, 3 dots, open external editor. Oh my gosh, it is really unhappy. I think it's because this is just right after the update, so I probably have to close it and then reopen it, because I just updated it and then somehow it unlinked itself during the update. I might even have to restart my computer to link it, which would not be fun. So let's see if that works. Ooh, that's not good. Try again. We were hoping today would be more stable than last Tuesday's update. Just give it another try, I hope. There it goes again. And if you're new to Horizon, this is the norm. They break things pretty much every Tuesday, and you just got to roll with the punches and figure out how to work around it. All right, so here we go. 3 dots, edit script, and that time it works. Yay! All right, so yes, I trust the authors. Now we're not going to do too much. Make sure you click allow. Here in start, what we're going to do is just create an interval, and we'll call this loop, parentheses, curly braces. So we have a local method called loop, and in start, we'll use async dot set interval, parentheses, parentheses, arrow function, curly braces, so that we can call loop. And then we're going to call loop on a looping of once per second, so 1,000 milliseconds. Shift Alt F to make it pretty. I guess I did a good job. And now that loop is being called once per second, we can now say this dot entity dot as a projectile launcher gizmo dot launch, and that's it. You'll notice that launch has properties for projectile launcher options. We'll take a look at that in a second, but for now, I want to face this upright, and the easiest way to rotate this is just to grab our rotation, snap it to 90 degrees, make sure to turn snapping on, and then grab the red axes, and now it's upright. Clear, and world simulation on, and we should see, there it is, projectile. And from the properties panel, we can change the properties. So we could try changing it to a nice little purple. And turn that off, give that a go. Maybe turn off the world on and on again. Now we've changed the color. We can change the speed, we can change the gravity, we can change the scale. Let's go to larger so you can see it better on the video recording. And then world simulation off and on again. Boom, that thing's huge. I thought we selected pistol, but that does not look like a pistol. That looks more like a sphere. What does sphere look like? Ooh, okay, so sphere looks a lot more spherical. Interesting. Rocket launcher. I love rocket launcher. That trail effect is amazing. Grenade is kind of interesting. Depending on what you're building, that could be useful. Sphere unlit. It's interesting because I don't know that I can tell the difference. Let's stick with sphere for now. Let's change the speed up to 30, so maybe even 50, so it feels more like a gun. Hitting the reset button there, just because I think it might be a little faster. Let's go to 70. I think that's going to feel a lot more like a gun. And reset world. There we are. Is that faster? It's hard to tell. All right, now our scale is too big, so we'll go down to 0.1 again, and then we can change trail length to 0 so that there is no trail. World simulation off and on. There we go. Now you can see the projectile is firing, and it's decent, but if we go to a pistol, it might look a little bit more like a pistol. I think that does look a little bit more like a gun bullet. And then we'd of course want to use something more like a black bullet, right, if we're firing bullets. So world simulation off and on again. And now we're talking. That seems pretty good. Next up, the size of that is kind of something you'll want to play with depending on your game. Also noting that the way that you change the size does affect how it affects players. So if it's bigger, it's easier to hit players with. And you'll note here that the default projectile pool size is 10. This is how many can exist at the same time. And so if you look up, there are 10 projectiles up there. We can't see them, but because they're too far away. But if we change the speed down to something like 5, and then hit world simulation off and on, you'll see that there are now I just don't feel like speed is actually affecting this. I really don't. It didn't seem like it's ever changed. Go to 1 just to check. World simulation off and on. Yeah, it's not changing it. So that's where we come into code. Apparently that no longer works. In code blocks that definitely did work, but it looks like here the only way to change the launch is to use launch options. So we'll go into here and add curly braces. And it's, well, I thought that's how we would do it. It says options, launch projectile options. I think because it's missing all the options. Yeah, so it's missing properties for speed. So if we type speed colon and set it to 1, control save, now it's happy. Okay. So yeah, it says it's optional, but definitely not optional. Give that a second to compile. Shouldn't take too long, and it should automatically restart the script. And then what we should see is 10 projectiles on the screen at the same time. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then the top one you can see is getting disappeared as the new one spawns in. And that's because we have it set to 10. Now, if we go into the code, we can make this a little easier to visualize by changing the launch speed to be, let's say, 300 milliseconds. Control save. And we're going to go and change the count to 20, so we can see that has, oh, it looks like max of 16. Okay. Well, I guess they're going to protect us from shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak. Pun not intended. And what you can see is they're limiting us to 16. 10 is pretty decent, especially if you're using this for like a gun. It's very rare that you need that many existing at the same time. If you go down to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that's probably decent if you're using it as a gun, but if you're starting to use this as like a stream of water, 16 is going to make it so you can make it look like water. Definitely lots of ways to do that. If you're building like a fountain, you can change the color to like a little watery blue. You can change the trail length to be more like 0.2. Now we should get some sort of watery look. Let's get that world reset. It needs a longer trail. Let's go to a length of 1. And then another thing we could do is change our rotation here to 15 degrees. Grab our snap rotate like this. And now that we've got this kind of arched, we can then add some gravity, which we'll set to 1. And give that a second. So this should have just a little bit, refresh. Whoa, there they fall. That's not bad. We do want to give them a little bit more launch speed, right? So back in the code, since that's the only way to adjust this, we could create a property, of course, and then adjust it from the properties panel. Let's just go ahead and set the speed to 15. Maybe 15 is too much. We'll go with 10. And control save. And now we should get pretty decent looking little water effect. Using a bullet is definitely the mistake for this water. Whoa! 15, way too powerful. Let's add more gravity, 9 on the gravity. Let's change it from pistol to sphere. There we go. Now we're getting a little bit of a water effect. And that is nice. Yeah, as you can see, that looks and feels like a little waterfall, water fountain. And you can create quite a bit of things with that. So let's see. We've got 16 of them. In this case, it looks like 5 would probably do the trick. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, no. I mean, unless that's the effect you're going for. 8. Yeah, so depending on where you're landing, having a smaller pool is going to be better for optimization. But also when they hit the ground, you'll notice that they disappear as well. So if we go back to 16 and you look at the ground, when they hit, they disappear. They don't go underneath. They're just stopping right there. So they are getting destroyed as soon as they hit. So you could leave it at 16 and just not worry about it. It would be more like if they're floating off into infinity and there's just always 16 floating into infinity. So let's go do one last thing just for kicks and giggles. I'm going to grab the duplicate tool, Control D, slide that over some arbitrary amount, grab the rotate tool, rotate this way, rotate that way, and then we're going to we're going to undo that, Control D, slide this one over. I'm going to show you a quick trick. It might help you, it might not. And so what we're going to do is select the one in the center first, then select these two on the edges. And now what we can do is change our rotation angle to, let's go with 60 degrees. 6 times 6 is 36, yeah. And then Control D, rotate, Control D, rotate, and there we go. There's our 6 projectiles. Then we can delete the 3 in the center. Unless, well, I guess that actually looks pretty cool. I guess that actually looks pretty cool. So there you can see, it's kind of like a little water fountain feature. So projectile launchers are very useful in all sorts of ways. So definitely, you can play with that. Okay, we have done enough playing with the projectile launcher gizmo though. So we're going to delete that. Scripts. Whew, I'm going to pause there. Okay, so you can imagine if you had one of those firing really fast, you could make it look like a laser, like in laser tag, which is kind of cool. Done that before, really neat. We're gonna go ahead and delete this script since we don't need it anymore. And we're now going to create a new script, which is going to be a projectile launcher. Now we haven't talked about physics projectiles. We'll get to that. We're just focusing on the launcher gizmo for a minute. So projectile launcher underscore entity, there we go. And that's a terrible name for this. Let's rename it and call it, I'm just going to delete and try again. Handheld launcher underscore entity, because we want to be able to hold it. And so we need to build something you can hold. And so we're going to just very quickly gray box something. Shapes, we're going to grab a cylinder, and we're going to grab, that's it. We're just going to use a cylinder. This is the barrel and everything. So we'll go ahead and droop. That's the barrel. We're going to turn off snap rotation. Going to hit Control D. We're going to grab rotate. Maybe turn snap rotation on for 90 degrees. Rotate that 90 degrees. This is so hacky, but this is the gray boxing stage. And that's what gray boxing is all about. So we're going to grab the gray scaler, scale that down, scale that on the red axes. There we go. That pretty much looks like a projectile launcher thingy. Just one or two more little things to make it really look like it launches projectiles. All right, looks good. I'm just going to grab a couple more scale tools. Literally using 3 spheres here. It's so ridiculous. But there we have it. Looks nice. And now what we need to do is pull out a projectile launcher gizmo. So we go back to our gizmos tab, pull out the projectile launcher. Now we want this to be centered with our barrel. So on the barrel, we will right click, copy position. Then we're going to click on projectile launcher and paste position. We then want to slide it so that it is outside of the barrel, because otherwise it will collide with the barrel, and that would not be good. We'll then select rotation, rotating it 90 degrees, and it looks like it is just about ready. Next, we need to select all of this and group it. I'm going to start by selecting this one, which seems like the right choice. The up is facing that way. No, up is facing, this one. So ideally what I'm trying to do is get the up facing this way. Red is X, Y, Z, RGB. So the forward is not facing in the forward direction, which is kind of problematic. The forward is the blue direction. This one is. This one's perfect. Let's use this one. So see, the blue is the forward direction, red is the right, I don't know, whatever direction that is, and then green is our up direction. So using this as our first selected, we can then select the rest, then right click and create parent object is how you create a group now. They've renamed it. I've got to get used to that. So now that we've grouped it, creating a parent object, we can now rename this and call it a handheld launcher. Yes, I am calling it that. Ideally to not use that other word. All right, so now that we've got this set up, we can see that our, when we select the whole thing, we can see that our forward did not accept the forward that we wanted to. That's actually going to be a problem later. But for now, we're just going to ignore that. So in the past, it used to be whatever you selected first. I don't know if that is just not a thing anymore. Let's go ahead and unparent child objects. And we're going to delete this thing. If I select it from out here and select the 4 objects like that, and then right click, create parent object like outside of here, not on the hierarchy. RGB. Yeah, okay, so that works. So if you do it out here, it does use the forward direction. It looks like, at least. Yeah, use the forward direction of the object you selected first, but if you do it in the hierarchy, it doesn't. So now you know. All right, rename this as handheld launcher. And now that we've got this set up, we can now attach our script. So we'll go down here and attach the handheld launcher script. And now we're going to go scripts, 3 dots, open an external editor. And so inside of here, we're going to start by getting rid of HZ dots because you know I don't like them. And then control period, enter to import explicitly at the top. And then in the properties, we need to have a reference to the launcher gizmo. So we're going to say launcher gizmo colon type colon prop types dot entity, and then comma at the very end of that line, control save. Now we have a reference to the launcher gizmo, and if we come back in here, once it finishes compiling, we'll see that appear down here. We can then drag the reference into here. And if you're building a game where you need to have a lot of these things, you're only going to want to have one, like handheld launcher, and then duplicate it when you're finished, when you're completely finished building the entire thing. That's when you want to duplicate it and customize it and make various different versions of it, because otherwise you have to make the changes to every single one. So that's just a little tip. All right, so now that we got this set up, heading back over here, we want to launch the projectile when they press their index trigger. To do that, we're going to need to connect it in pre-start. Make sure to click enter. Make sure your pre-start has a capital S. And when you hover over it, you'll notice you get all these remarks that tells you that you have set it up correctly. Just had someone a couple days ago who was having a problem where they couldn't figure out why, but it was because it was a lowercase s. And it's even hard for me to notice because it looks the same. Although I guess I have spell checker. Look at that. My spell checker catched it or caught it. So under extensions, you can install code spell checker. That's the one I use. And I guess that's going to save your day someday. Maybe. Unless you don't care about spelling, in which case you might not want that. All right, so what we want to know is when the index is down, when they press their index finger. So index down and curly braces. So now we've got a local method for index down. We can connect that in pre-start using connect code block event, parentheses this dot entity. So we're connecting it from self. This is running on the grabbable. The grabbable receives that connected, or that event. We'll then say code block events dot index, and we can see index trigger down. I do want to mimic the name of this, so I'm actually going to change this from index down to index trigger down so it has a very similar name. That's not required, but I just like to do that. And then we need a callback which has the player in it, so parentheses player, and then we can make our arrow function to the right, curly braces, calling the index trigger down method, and then passing in the player parameter. Now it's not happy yet because we don't accept a player parameter down there, but just finishing with a couple semicolons because I like semicolons. Let me collapse that so you can read the whole line, or close to the whole line. And now we need to put the player in here. So just quickly recapping, we've connected the code block event from our self, the grabbable, using the index trigger down event, which receives a player parameter, and we are calling our local method index trigger down and passing the player parameter, which we need to add to the parameter section here. So player : player, noting the second one is capitalized, making sure you click enter as you're typing so that it gets auto added to the import line at the top. And now under index trigger down, we can type props dot launcher gizmo dot as parentheses projectile launcher gizmo, just like before, then dot launch, and then parentheses, curly braces, speed, 70, and semicolon, Shift Alt F to make it pretty. Let's go to the properties panel, Control C, Control V. We're going to create a property called speed so that every weapon could have its own custom speed. We're then going to change this property to be of type number. We're going to give it a default value, of 70, and then you can customize that on the properties panel, hitting backspacing this 70 and changing this to props.speed, and Control Save. So now when the player presses their index trigger, it's going to launch a projectile, and that's it. We're pretty much done. Now we do want to add visual effects and sound effects, and theoretically you want to do like a theoretically you also want to make it locally scripted, but that is out of scope for today's video. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So now that we have this handheld projector set up from the script standpoint, we can see the speed down here, so we could change that to 60 if we wanted. We're now going to make this a grabbable object, or grabbable entity. So here under motion, we'll change it from animated to interactive. It's now set to grabbable. And we do want to scale it down, so we'll grab our scale tool, scale that to be kind of human sized. It's kind of hard to tell if it's the right size, so you do usually want to move it towards the spawn point gizmo to use that as a reference for scale. And also noting that this is a gray box model, so like it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to change it up a lot later, but it should at least do the trick. And that's seeming just about right there. With that set up, we can select our projectile. We can change our color to be kind of like a more gray tone, I'm thinking, for the projectile. We can change it to be the pistol. We can change player, so that we have collision options here. We haven't actually got into that. We probably should. All players except owner, all objects except launchers group, all objects except launchers group. So it doesn't collide with its own group. It can collide with any objects, and it can collide with all players except for the person holding the gun. The speed is set to 20, but we're not using that. Static collision is turned on. Otherwise, it'll fly through static models. Gravity, we're not going to change the gravity. Scale, we're going to change to 0.05, so it's a little bit smaller. Trail length, we're going to set to 0, so it looks more like a bullet. And projectile color is set up. Pool size, I'm going to change that to 5, so that there is never too many on scene at the same time. All right, with that set up, we should be good to try this out. So click World Simulation off and on, jump into preview mode, click E to grab, and I'm holding it terribly, but you can see it is launching the projectile. And let's fix that. You know, we're definitely developing for mobile these days and desktop, so it's not just like VR used to be. So we need to actually go in and change the grab anchor, which would have been a good thing to do in VR anyway. So down here, you can see that there is options for the grabbing. I'm going to turn off two-handed grab. I'm going to see if I can find avatar pose will be pistol pose. Use VR grab anchor, use Horizon World's cross-screen grab anchor, so we can turn on both grab anchors. Grab lock is a good idea to turn on so that it stays in their hand. And here under grab anchor, we might not get an easy way to set this up. We can see where they're at right now. It does look decent. We can move it back by using the Z for the forward. So X, Y, Z. Which one of these? This is rotation, this one's position. So the rotation is perfect because we set up our rotation correctly in the beginning by making sure it was oriented correctly. So now just moving it back by minus 0.05. I think you have to let go and re-grab it to see it change. No, that didn't work. I'm not sure how you make it visually update. There are two areas where we need to change it, so let's change it down here as well. Grab anchor position, and we'll set that to minus 0.05. Now, I'm not familiar with this grab aim position. That's interesting. Not familiar with that at all. All right, let's go ahead and hit world simulation on, play, grab, and there it is. All right, so now we can see that we're holding it correctly. Oh, when we aim, boom, there we go, nice. And voila. It's a good start. It's not perfect. The grabbing position is not right yet, but at least it fires. It's not targeting our aim in the center. That's something we'll have to set up. I think that gets fixed when you change it to local scripted. That's less of a problem in VR. It's really only a desktop and mobile problem. And now that we've got the pistol launching, and I'm down to my last 5 minutes, I think what we need to look at was how would you get a player collision? So it's another connecting of code block event. So let's type it out, connect code block event, but this time it's received from the launcher gizmo. So we use props.launcher gizmo. This is going to create an error later that we're going to have to investigate. And then if you already know what it is, good job. Then we need the code block event for projectile hit player. That's going to be received with quite a bit of information. And I just recently learned a new way of doing this. You can just type payload. Oh wait, that's not working, is it? Yeah, that might work, we'll see. So we do payload, arrow function, curly braces. If we hover over the payload, you don't actually need to describe what the payload is. No, okay, this one is set up differently than usual. Normally they'd be in a payload, but for whatever reason this one's in an array. Okay, so this one's actually going to be, it's a player, comma, position, comma, normal, comma, headshot. We'll use is headshot. You can make these, you can name these whatever you want. It's headshot. There we go. And then in our thing here, we can now call a local method for what we want to do when we hit a player. And we'd say projectile hit player, parentheses, curly braces. We can then pass in the information that we want. So if we want all of these things, which I kind of recommend doing, Control-C, Control-V, then we can change that to explain what they are. So this one's a player, this one is a vec3, this one is also a vec3. If you didn't know that, you can hover over it to see. And headshot is a Boolean. There we go. Now we've received all the information in the projectile hit player, and we just need to connect it in the curly braces here by typing in projectile hit player, parentheses, and then we need to pass in all those things again, player, position, normal, and his headshot. Can add a semicolon here, and then you're going to remember that there's this issue, which if we hover over it, you'll see is potentially undefined. So we have to say if, parentheses, props.launcher gizmo, meaning that we did fill it out on the properties panel, because if we didn't, it would be otherwise undefined. So now we verified that using an if statement. That's going to then call projectile hit player, and we can do whatever we want with the player. So you could say player dot, what is that, force? I can't remember what we did in the first one, but we could like maybe apply force or something. You could change their scale. Like there's so much you could do, but we should just do console.log, parentheses, player.name.get. There you go. So now at least you'll have verification that that happened. At this point, I would need a tester to test this. I'm thinking we might be able to pull out Gizmo a testing NPC to do some tests with. And we'll just give him the name Yo. I have a good friend named Yo. And then clear, world simulation on, and play, grab the gun, and now we shoot Yo. Oh, grab again. There we go. And so we can see Yo hit the screen, so our script is working. Fantastic. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. So we didn't get to talk about physics projectile gizmos. That will have to be saved for another day. So I'd like for you guys, if you want this, please leave a comment letting me know that you want to see physics projectiles. Let me know that you want to see local scripts. The benefit of physics projectiles is it doesn't have to be limited to the projectile launcher gizmo options. You could be launching a pie at someone's face, or whatever else you want to launch. So physics projectiles are pretty cool. It's not too hard, right? Like, it's basically you move an object to the position and then you apply physics force to it, and then using the physics engine, it just launches. So like, it's not too hard, but it is something that we should do. We also didn't get to do visual effects, sound effects. I would recommend you guys add that on your own. If you've never done that before, it's not too difficult. So in the properties panel, you'd add your visual effect, your sound effect. You'd group it into the gun itself, just like you did the launcher gizmo. So that way the sound is coming from the tip of the gun and the visual effect is playing at the tip of the gun. You could do on hit. You could play visual effects and sound effects, so you could have another set of sound effects and visual effects up here that get played when it hits a thing. Those would not be grouped in. They would need to be moved to the position of the hit. This is all stuff that I would love to see you do on your own time, see how far you can get. You also kind of want to do, like, when index trigger is down, playing haptic feedback on the player. So you can do player dot right hand dot play haptics, and then you need to provide a bunch of information like the duration. It could be 100 milliseconds, the haptic strength. You just type haptic strength and then dot medium, comma, haptic sharpness, dot, say sharp, because it's a gun. And sharpness describes like how rough it is. I'm completely out of time though, so that's kind of an example. You would also need to like track the on grab start event to know if they're right-handed, so that you could do if right-handed, play this, else do the other hand. So as you can tell, there is quite a bit that could be done here. So like if right. Anyway, I have to stop there, but have fun, see how far you can take that on your own, and feel free to share it in the Vidyuu Discord and let us know how far you got or where you get stuck, and let me know in the comments what else you'd like to see on this topic. I will see you in the next one. Bye!